We're back for another break. I think we just need to dive into, and I know you were wrapping up a thought.
I was asking him like, what has he learned since? The structures broke down. He's divorced. That relationship's over. Then what's next? Like, what did you do in the time after that?
I mean, art
Art.
was a very valuable experience for me to explore things for myself. Interesting, like I was going to therapy, I was going to different churches, I was doing meditation. A lot interesting thing about coming from Minnesota to LA. It tended to make me a little more extroverted than I naturally am.
Because of sunshine.
You get out, you got to meet people, and so it made me a bit more social than I would be. But then for me, just a really meaningful thing was finding my own voice within art, and then even aspects of the shadow to explore within art. And so just being able to like express and create things that have like a certain darker energy to them that are part of who I am, but it's like a much healthier way to try to...
Instead of suppressing,
exactly,
you actually like explored them for a time so that they maybe wouldn't be so hidden or controlling or causing dysfunction or causing heartache and things like that.
Totally.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned before something that some of the themes that you were understanding in therapy, and something Diego and I like to talk about is the male-female dynamic. So I'm curious if you'd like to share at all, like what were you learning about yourself as a man growing into becoming a man at the time? You had mentioned earlier in our chat here about, having a little bit of a victim mentality when you were in the other relationship. So did you learn about that particularly in your therapy, or what did you learn about yourself? You were expressing you were exploring your darkness and letting that come out and not be so hidden. But as far as your thoughts about yourself as growing into a man, or then thinking future relationship possibilities, like what were you thinking in the realm of becoming more of a man? What were you learning in therapy? And were you even thinking about having a future relationship at some point? Were you hoping for that?
Yeah, I mean, I at some point I started dating again. Nothing was really sticking long term. That was its own kind of just process of sort of, it sounds so silly, but it's like if you're with one person from a young age until this is like, yeah, not all women are this one woman. And I don't mean that to sound like in my head, I assume that, like, that, but experientially, just like, oh, this person isn't going to react that same way that my ex did. And it's just like, oh, okay, maybe that's something to learn. But nothing was really sticking. I'm a very romantic person. So I do have craved relationship. And so, I would write music about it and things like that. But for me, it was, I guess I've learned, I was always learning new things. The last year, I've been working freelance and doing different film things, but it wasn't super, I wasn't flourishing necessarily. I was living in LA, which sometimes that feels like an accomplishment just to survive in LA. But at the end of last year, I was like, okay, I kind of need to recalibrate and figure out myself a little more, like
to the next level.
Kind of go to the next level. Then COVID happened, so but that's where my mind was thinking, and I was also thinking like, okay, for whatever reason, people, whether it's a church group or just friends or what it was, people be like, oh, Jesse, I really appreciate when you share things, and I really appreciate your wisdom. I'm like, what? So
you didn't see yourself as wise?
No, not really, but kind of accepting maybe this is part of who I am, and so also starting to think more in terms of, I'm 42 this year, but what can I bring? What can I do to kind of provide that to other people? And if I can help with guidance and learning and understanding their state of their being or their emotional state and the things they're going through, maybe not one-to-one, but at least like sort of principally within each dynamic. So anyway, I just started thinking more in those terms, but I didn't know how. And also just really thinking like, okay, it's been this amount of time, I've been trying to work on myself. I'm I think I'm really ready for a real relationship, and I want that. And I.
And when you say working on yourself, you mean just understanding how you were in relationship in the past and
taking responsibility for what I was bringing to the table, trying to change behaviors for myself because I didn't want to live this way. Not because I was just trying to please somebody.
Okay. Okay, got it. Yeah. That's huge, I think. Doing something because it's how you want to be for yourself, not because it's the expectation that's placed on you.
Right. Yeah. So trying to do that. Now I am in a relationship now, and it's incredible how that can create even more of a intensity around that.
Yeah.
To be like, are you really going to test that metal?
Well, stop though.
Hard.
Before you get to your relationship now, though, I guess I'm curious. Before we get too far into that relationship, I want to find out. So you were starting to talk about how this year you were really feeling like you've understood a lot of things. You kind of know who you are now. You know who you are as an artist. You know who you are as a musician, a filmmaker. You know who you are kind of spiritually now. Because you said you had mentioned kind of exploring some other ideas within your faith, and you've landed at some place internally there. So then you feel ready for a relationship, and then COVID hit. And the one thing Diego and I are interested in is relationships in COVID, and how that has we think, our theory is that it's either really brought people together or just completely done. It doesn't seem to be anything in the middle. It's been a really purging of relationships that were already existing to either bring them closer or to finalize it, moving them apart. But what I remember talking to you, I remember when COVID was going on, and I'm checking on everybody, right? I'm checking on people. How are you doing? How are you feeling with all of this? I was feeling, a lot of the confusion that was going on, and just sort of the stress of the unknown that we were walking into this. And really, I called you and I was like checking on you about COVID, and you were just in a completely different zone. Like COVID didn't even exist. No. You were in the relationship zone. Yeah. So what happened during that time for you? And I mean, and how you met your current partner? Talk about that. We all want to know. It's great. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's fun.
I think in the beginning of the year, I probably set some intention, like I want to be in a serious relationship with someone I'm in love with. So I probably did that for my New Year's intentions, wrote that down.
Yeah.
And again, I was just kind of like thinking, like, what do I need to do if, like, just differently, realizing, like, even as a director, those are skill sets you can use as a director, like managing people, helping people, and even going back to like my work in social services of just like, because I was on some sets or in situations where people are just like not very cooperative, and or you're just all these dynamics, and you're just trying to keep the vision and all this stuff. So like that's a skill set that doesn't necessarily have to apply to directing. So I just started thinking in those terms, and I was praying at the beginning of Lent, and I was going to do some fasting, and just like the word healing came to me.
Big surprise from our family.
Yeah.
We're a bunch of healers, I think.
And I guess I never thought of myself in those terms before, but then I started thinking about even my art was like a process for me to heal. And I also thought about like people who engage with it kind of creating healing, by their, whether they view my film or something like that. And then I just, again, started thinking about my family and like, well, how could I bring healing to my family? I don't know, but I just started interest in this. And so interesting enough, I was like, well, I'm an artist. I'm like moody and like, so what's this mean? And then I remembered this amazing musician and artist who I'd followed on Instagram, and she a while ago had posted about some kind of healing practice, and I was like looking for it, and she's this beautiful, astonishing, talented woman, And I'm sure she gets messages all the time, but I was like, I couldn't find the post that I knew I had seen. And so I just reached out to her and was asking, hey, what about this healing practice? And to my surprise, she responded to me and was like asking questions. And we just started having like beautiful conversations right away. And I knew, because I had some friends who like knew the other band member and stuff like that. So I knew
her band.
Yeah, and I knew like she's typically a reclusive person. And so the fact that she was giving me any time and energy was meaningful. And so that led us to developing a relationship. And then within by Easter, we actually met.
Well, I love the story of how she kind of perked up about you. Tell about the song you recorded.
Oh, well, so yeah, again, so she's she's prolific, and she's got a lot of followers, and these music videos are incredible. And so like the fact she was conversing with me was humbling. And she, I don't know if she asked about music or something, but she saw my music and listened to it and responded very generously and said she loved it. And I was just sort of like taken aback because I'm not really pursuing music. I'm just sort of like putting it out there because I was more of a diary. And so she said, well, let's work on something together. And I was like, I was kind of frozen. I'm like, you listen to our music, it's like really powerful. And
she has a powerful voice, yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. And I'm like, you want to work with me? But she's like, absolutely. So I was like, how do I do this? What do I, like, I'm also not like a very good musician in terms like I don't get together and just jam with people. It's a very solitary experience for me. But I'm like, this is a really amazing opportunity. And I was kind of fiddling around and stuff. I couldn't really figure anything out. And then one day I was listening to one of my playlists and a U2 song came on, and I was like, could I do a Jesse version of this? And I was playing along. I'm like, oh yeah, I think I could. And I listened to lyrics more. I was thinking, it's all I want is you. And I was thinking like, wow, this would be really interesting if this was two people singing back and forth to each other about kind of like the struggle through the relationship, but they keep going back to all I want is you. And so I was just like, I don't want to just like say, hey, here's an idea. I was like, I went and I had this space at the beginning of COVID. So I was just recording these tracks, and these people at the studio that they exited. And so I just like ran in there one night and just threw a super messy version down and came home, and I had to get on a phone call, and I tracked the drums in like one take and I just exported it and sent it to her. And she told me, like, it was weird. It was like later that night when she was listening to it, and because she wasn't familiar with the song, but she was hearing it, and it was just like we could feel, we hadn't even met in person, but we could almost like feel these fireworks going off of having this song and this connection. And that's when it was like, whoa, this is something really magical. And then she went and go ahead and tracked her version.
She did?
And it was just like,
I want to hear. I want to hear it.
It hasn't been released yet, so.
Oh my gosh, I want to hear it.
So that was just a really spiritual moment, because it's just like to connect on that level. And I've never really, I mean, I've sung with people before, and in subsequent conversations, he talked about like she gets offered to do duets a lot, but she just like doesn't vibe, so she doesn't do it. So
that started it, and then you decided to meet after that?
Yeah, then we finally met in person on Easter.
On Easter.
So it was interesting, like the beginning of the Lent, that kind of theme started, and then on Easter we met in person.
Isn't that so beautiful?
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Yeah.
We're just sitting here
just chiming in.
I just it's such a really interesting story. It's just fascinating to hear it, and it sounds like there's a lot of work that you did between your divorce and this new relationship. And I think that when a lot of people get out of a long-term relationship, you basically have two tracks. Date, numb, I don't want to think about it. Or even a variation of that is date but not be present. You know, like I'm going to date this person, but I'm not going to be present to this person. it's easy. I need to do this. This is what I need to do. These are the things I've been doing because I've been in a relationship for so long. I don't know what it's like to be not in a relationship, so I'm just gonna hunker down with somebody, even if it's not working, while I figure myself out. It sounds like you were like, no, I'm just gonna not be with
I
anybody.
mean, he dated,
You dated.
Yeah.
but nothing was connecting.
Yeah, but there was this period you
He
talk
was
about.
also working through.
Yeah, it seems like there's a period, at least a clearing, where you were at least like not dating. I don't know.
Oh yeah, there's definitely quite a few spaces, if not. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's a thing we don't celebrate. Like, you don't see movies where the dude is not dating
Ooh.
and he's just like, yo, I'm not dating and this is cool. Typically it's like you've got your bros being like, hey, what's up? Tinder, this, that. And it's this sort of consumer culture that makes people disposable. And yes, you were dating, and then there were also these pauses. And I think that those pauses, and I don't know what's going to happen with your relationship, but those pauses really helped inform the relationship you're in now, because you had that space. And it's something that I've observed in myself and that I observe in others. When you're out of a long-term relationship, it helps to have that pause. It doesn't have to be forever, but a pause of sorts. And so it's just cool to hear about it, because it also sounds like you are able to do the work and reflect and then bring that self, that new self, into a new space. And it's so easy to do all this work. It's kind of like, fad dieting. You get in good shape, but once you're back in a relationship, it like falls apart. But it seems like you're really trying to hold yourself accountable to what you've learned and get outside of those bad habits.
Yeah, I think I needed. I think there's like a both sides of the coin, yin yang thing of like, I needed to really learn how to be alone, like really like just know how to be alone and like be comfortable with just me, my dog for a while, but and be present with that. So yeah, like I could know exactly who I am. I think the reverse of that is like maybe the part of that also created with like I kind of kept distance even through dating, and just there probably was still some aftershocks of like I don't want to go through divorce again. So yeah, if I would kind of cut things off pretty quickly. And then even now, like I know I like me time, and I think I need to learn how to like honor that, but also like not distance myself. And
So that's like now the next step for you is you figured out who you are now, and now it's bringing that, entering into a new relationship and sorting that out now.
Right.
With another
So
person.
It's probably like a pendulum swinging
Yeah,
back
a little
and
bit,
forth
and
and
then
trying to hopefully
land.
to be like, okay, well I learned how to do that. Now I need to balance those two things.
So I am a romantic also, and I mentioned this, earlier today when we were chatting about how when you told me about this person, and I was just so happy for you, because I'm always happy for you, when you're doing wonderful things, and always encouraging and inspired and all this stuff, and also I love watching it unfold, and you knowing over the years, I knew you dated, but I remember you saying in the past, like, I wonder if that was it for me, like if I'll ever have any kind of powerful connection with anybody ever again, and you were kind of surrendering to that a little bit, and then now you actually just described this beautiful connection you have with this woman. And so in my mind, I'm like the happy, romantic and ending to the movie. Everything's happily ever after. They're just perfect, and they're just gonna be lovers forever and in love.
Slow camera movement in, the music swells.
What I will say, I've met her, and I've seen you guys' dynamic, and I loved how she is encouraging to you, and she is so loving towards you. And as a sister, it's beautiful. I felt so like happy to see you being sort of cherished. I mean, like that. But that there's a few months, several months maybe into the relationship, everybody has the first fight, or they start to, after the first little few months, things, I think in any relationship, there is no perfect thing where nobody ever has to figure things out. So you had told me, I was calling again, probably to check in. Like, I don't know if it was around the holiday, Christmas or November, like Thanksgiving. I don't remember when it was. I was like checking in, hey, how's it going? How's your perfect relationship? Tell me all about it so I can have hope and learn, and you had mentioned you had gotten in a pretty, in an argument the night before, and you thought that maybe you guys were broken up for good. And I was like, I will not accept this in this grand scheme of life where love is the remedy for everything. I will not accept. Internally, that's what I was saying, but I was being a good sister asking you, well, tell me about it. Tell me the story.
Love it. I like how you worked our title.
Well, it is. I mean, and I'm just kind of doing a little self-reflection too, and kind of making fun of myself and my sort of idealism for things. And I'm learning to not be so idealistic as well. So tell me, there are some funny moments that I don't know. I think it's hilarious, and kind of in the way I look at the world, the way I know Diego looks at the world, and probably you, is like there's some sort of like there's meaning in like everything, right? So tell me what you can tell me about that particular night and what happened, and have you recovered? And then I'll ask you my next question. So just tell me a little bit of the story, and then I'll ask you.
Like what you said about people and acknowledging a wisdom, you're willing to confront your errors and learn from them in a way that is authentic and real. And a lot of men don't do that. A lot of men don't do that. And typically what occurs is after a divorce or something like that is that it's all about how was it my fault? And you're like learning and then growing and then just acknowledging. And I think that relaxes your community to be like, yeah, that's cool. What else does Jesse have to say about this thing? Knowing that regardless of what the subject matter is, you'll be honest and authentic. That's I think a very appealing thing about a friend or anyone in your life, that you'll have that authenticity. That may not be accurate, may not be the perfect advice, but if it's coming from a place of authenticity, it feels like there's potential of workshopping something. That we may not have the perfect thing going, but as a band, we'll be able to jive and work it out. We'll land at something.
That's a great metaphor.
Yeah, that's what I think a good relationship is like. Like you have to play in a band. And when your partner stops playing, it's hard to continue.
So I was really excited that you had this new relationship, this connection that you had kind of almost given up on ever having again in your life. And you found this woman. She's beautiful. She's a match in a lot of ways to you. And she likes you and thinks you're wonderful and connected to you. And so, of course, in my romantic schoolgirl mind, I just want to think, great, Jesse's done, they're good. He's good. I don't have to worry about my brother Jesse anymore. He's good. He's found his woman, and everything is going to be perfect and easy after that. But of course, that's not reality. And so tell me about this. I called you once, several months into your relationship. I was probably just checking in on you. Hey, how's life? How you feeling? What's going on? And you were kind of in a spot. Maybe I always know when to call. I don't know. Now I'm starting to think about this. Probably. Like, call Jess. So you had a fight the night before. So tell us a little bit about the fight and the funny moment about it, which is hilarious. And then I'll ask you my next question.
Yeah, I mean, without going into gory details.
Right, I don't know gory details.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where, like, I'm surprised to be in this, like, I'm just surprised by a certain, like, oh, this is a thing, and I'm reacting in a way that is just purely emotional because I'm responding, like, whatever my pain center is just sort of like defend, and it created this. I don't even remember what it was about. I don't remember.
You don't remember what the fight was about.
But we had an argument, and I was at her place, and it was late night, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm out of here. And so I grabbed my stuff and walked out the front door and was walking down it was late, it was dark, it was cold, and in that process, I'm trying to think of how much I want to say. She
You don't have to say details.
Yeah. So in that process, like it was dark, and I was in a whirlwind, and it's in Topanga Canyon, and it's just like this weird terrain. And I stumbled. I couldn't see where I was going, and I smacked my foot really hard on the cold concrete, like all my body weight. It was like a weird balance thing where you think this is the ground, but the ground's like here. And
so you fell.
And and I was like, oh, that hurt. And then I grabbed my stuff, and I'm like, okay, this really hurts. I don't think I can make it to my car. So
Why is that funny? It sounds terrible.
It's funny because he's trying to get away from this. He's being a guy, and he's leaving because
and I literally had to crawl back up the stairs and stumble and hobble. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I think I broke my heel." She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I think I broke my heel."
You broke your heel.
Yeah, and I think I did. I think I fractured my heel. And so I was on
It's funny. You get why it's funny.
crutches.
Because you had to go crawling back to it?
Yeah.
Okay. I get, yeah. I just feel hurt. I'm like, gosh, I hope he's okay.
No, and it's funny because it's meaningful. It means he wasn't supposed to leave. And he was like the universe or God or whoever was like, oh, you think you're running? You think you're out of here because this is horrible and this doesn't feel good, whatever's happening. I'm leaving, which is what we talk about guys do.
Yeah.
She doesn't want him to leave. She's behaving, she's probably very upset, like all like women get in fights. I'm just saying subconsciously, maybe we're saying, get out of here, I don't want you here, but deep down, we don't want you to leave.
Yeah.
But you're doing the guy thing, I'm assuming she's doing a girl thing. If it were me, I would be doing the girl thing. And you're leaving, you're like, fine, I'm out of here. You fall, you have to come crawling back. And it's like a point of, okay, Jess, like get back in there, and maybe, I don't know what happened next, but what I'm particularly interested in.
I just wanted to make sure that he's okay. Are you okay now?
It's better. It still stings a little bit in the morning. It's a little stiff, but yeah.
That's what I care about. Is Jesse's physical well-being.
His feet will be fine.
Aaron, meanwhile, was like, that's irrelevant. The metaphor is the metaphor that you had to go crawling back to that woman.
And it's not about that. It's not like how hard you had to crawl back. It's more like, oh, this is interesting.
I agree. You can't heal with being alone at that point.
Yeah.
Well, and what I was particularly interested in is when I talked to you, it was the day after. And you said, I don't remember, I don't know what happened when you went inside or how that all played out, but the day after is when I called you and you said, I think we're done. I think we're broken up. And I was just like, and then, so whatever our conversation was, and then maybe it was like a few weeks later or something, I hadn't checked in or whatever. And you said, this is what I really want to talk about, which I think is really incredible and important, which is what did you realize and kind of what was your action steps that you took after that disagreement? Some decisions you made and some thoughts you had about relationship and yourself.
I don't totally remember what I told you.
Okay, then I'll tell you. Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
You did.
So what you told me, which I thought was really interesting and beautiful and showed growth, which is that you realized that you still had certain patterns. Mm-hmm. Even though you'd done all this work on your own, mm-hmm. you'd learned a lot about yourself. Once you actually entered back into a real relationship with someone you actually have this connection with, mm-hmm. you still were exemplifying some patterns, and you decided, okay, well, I can just leave her and just be like, mm-hmm. I'll just go be on my own again, or I'll mm-hmm. find someone else. And then you just went through the process of saying, no, this is someone who actually I have a connection with. I can decide I can just keep going the rest of my life doing these patterns, or I can mm-hmm. say I'm just not going to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And even when I can say like, and so then what you did is you realized that, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go back into and engage with this relationship. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that from then on out you're perfect, but in that moment I thought it was really beautiful, or that the relationship is perfect, I should say, or never going to have another argument. But in that moment I was really compelled by what you were saying, which is I realized and made the choice to go back and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to understand now that I'm in relationship why I'm still having these patterns after all this work I've done. And it shows a greater story of how like we can know our patterns and we can confess our patterns and we can keep working on our patterns in relationship or out, but it's still a lifelong journey of forgiveness and trying again and failing and trying again. And then eventually one day through healing, through work, through confession, through whatever methods we take, then maybe that thing doesn't plague us anymore. So once you realize, but my point in the whole thing is that I just thought it was so beautiful as a guy, a man continue to grow in a relationship. You had the fight. You probably had a right to say, I'm done with you. I'm assuming, I'm making stuff up. I'm assuming how guys think, if there's a fight, like, ooh, she's a lot of work. I'm going to go find someone who's easy or whatever. But you dug deep, you found the connection to her, and you found your pattern and you're like, okay, again, I'll be responsible here for myself. Both people have to be responsible for themselves. But for you as a guy, I just was really impressed by that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. Did I articulate that?
Yeah, I'm just now curious to hear if Jesse experienced the situation the same way.
Or is that just something I made up in my head when I was talking to you?
No. I remember, and that was definitely a point of me being like, why I after all this time, all this sort of like this gap of time of like, maybe I'm just, maybe this is just time to kind of move into like single old, mature man stage.
You're not
just
old.
be like the wise man, I was actually already thinking that. I'm like, I was visualizing my life of like, how can I be content just on my own? And and before this, before we met. And so, but to be re-engaged with someone who's so, gives me life and creates a spark and who's inspiring and who's so intelligent. And for me to have these same patterns of someone who loves me in this situation, who loves me, who wants to know me, and yet I hide and resist because I'm afraid of some kind of judgment, or I'm afraid that what that person sees they actually won't love if I'm free to be who I am. Even if that's not reality, like that's my emotional reaction and that's my pattern. And so when I distance myself, that creates so much instability and that creates so much, understanding, like that doesn't feel good to them because that's me. And so seeing like, okay, why am I doing this again? And just saying, this person is someone who I've fallen in love with, and I can just make the commitment to.
It's a decision
to endure some challenge and to try to. And that's one thing, though, I want to give her complete credit for. She's someone who will look at herself. She sees truth, and she can dissect it and just be like, and just be accountable for, things that she may be responsible for. And that means a lot to me because it's not just like I'm the one with all the problems. But
yeah, it's important.
And so with that, like this is someone, that dynamic to me is very rare, and that is a person that is worth fighting for and worth working on facing my own discomfort to try to move through that into the place where we do have some equilibrium and find harmony and peace. And if I kind of have that mindset of like, this is not a fun part of the process, but this is part of the process to what the goal is, then I will endure it. And I will love in this way at this moment in time. And I kind of had this other thought that would keep coming up. And this is where my faith does completely help me, where I look to Jesus and I think, I'll ask myself, do you have anything more to give? And like, you gotta be honest, like, can you give more? And if I usually when I ask my that question, I'm like, okay, I can try to give again. I can try to give more.
But because you have your faith and your spiritual connection to God that you have, you can replenish through that source of love for you as a human being, separate from the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I just look to Christ as someone who gave everything completely. When things were not returned to him, he just kept giving, and that's who I look to as like, that's how to love. So
We talk, first of all, oh my gosh.
Beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
So beautiful. Yeah, we talk about that a lot about how Christ embodies that love and provides that unconditional model for us to follow, and it's a challenging one to live. And I think that the journey for men is a little different for women, obviously, whether or not someone identifies in the gender, just the role, masculine, feminine. And I think that you really hit the nail on the head there in terms of, can I give more? Sometimes the answer is no. But with a greater power, higher power, you can find grounding and find little ways that you can give more. And it, with me and my past relationship, helped a lot that we had a shared faith. That was huge. And I feel like why we're in good standing is because of that. There was definitely a period where I wanted to leave and just not even talk to her ever again. Just cut her out and just be done with it. And I even told her that, and she was like, that'd be awful. And I said, I know, but that's how angry I was at some of these things. So I went back to certain sermons, and you're like, well, okay, we had a foundation of friendship. Can I lean on that? Can I give to that? And yeah, I can give to that, not to being together, but to that friendship. It sounds like for you as well that you find a grounding in that. I think my question to follow up on that idea is, how do you feel when you run from this situation? What's that like for you as a person who then eventually will go to this source of grounding? But in that moment before, what do you feel like when you're like, I got to get out of here? What's that like?
Self-preservation, kind of. Yeah, I realize a lot of times when I'm in that state of being, a lot of my ego is actually what's going on, and I'm just realizing like there's a lot of pride, and if I were perfect, which I'm not, but if I were better at this, I wouldn't be so offended by things that I don't need to be offended about. I wouldn't need to personalize them so deeply as to interpreting them as like me not being special enough, or me not getting something that I feel I deserve, or whatever it might be. So rather than just having sort of like that be how I'm living, that energy from me of just like that, I don't know how to explain it any better, but I realize typically I'm getting either that's happening, I'm getting maybe my feelings hurt about something that I don't actually need to have my feelings hurt about, or I'm actually not being strong enough in the sense where I'm just communicating with love and compassion and understanding just the truth of myself to her, and trusting her enough with that to honor me. I almost retreat from that of being like, well, maybe it's not safe to say this, so I'm not going to. So I need to actually be strong enough. That's my weakness that I'm working through to establish that, and a lot of times, more than likely, is like that's not really even how she would respond. Is like my perception of how she might respond. And one thing that has happened in 7 years is like when you live on your own, you're a single guy, you can kind of be kind of selfish. You don't have to answer to anybody. You can do what you want, and not that like I'm that callous, but there's certain elements of that I think that like are very clear of like some just selfishness. That if you want to be in a relationship, you can't really be selfish. So I guess that's kind of a line that I'm trying to.
And I guess my question is it worth it? Is the value that you're getting by learning these things now that you're in partnership with someone greater than the value of continuing on just kind of going into, is there something that's compelling about your growth that you're experiencing in this that is important for you?
That's an interesting question. Because at the beginning of this relationship, I did all this journaling, and I was like, what are the reasons I even want to have a relationship?
Yeah.
Like, what is this really about? And I had all these reasons, and I probably would edit that a bit, but top of the list was growth. And so a lot of times when a challenge happens, I think, well, I wanted to grow, right? So here's the opportunity to grow and to mature and to learn how to love better, so that it's not always, for me, it's not always predicated on, is she giving me exactly what I feel I need?
Ooh, talk more to that. She's giving me exactly what I think I need.
Yeah, because I feel like if I'm in a relationship simply for all the romance or the physical things and the intimacy, but if that's just not there, then it's like, well, you're not serving me. But if I can take it upon myself, say I'm in this to learn how to love, to be loving, and to grow, then even if the partner's not doing that, then it's valuable for me to exist in this place so I can develop that.
It's kind of back to what you said earlier about who do I want to be regardless of how other people are being.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's easy because I'm still human and I'm just
Sure.
like, give me what I need.
Yeah.
So
and those times are beautiful when when the needs are being met, and that's the goal. I mean, those are the moments we live for. You know, those beautiful moments of that regenerate us and that kind of.
And I want to add though, like, it is also her. So it's not just sort of like a philosophical principle to do it for myself, although I think that's really important.
Sure.
Because like the person you're with has to have certain magic where you believe in them so much that that's also, what you're going to do in that.
Yeah, she's worth it. It's compelling still.
Yeah.
It's compelling in ways that it might not be compelling with some. That's why it wasn't compelling with any of these other people you tried to date in the past.
Right.
Why we typically get in a relationship is for the stuff that you talked about, like the cool rock star. She's gorgeous, she's funny, she gets my sense of humor, or we have these shared experiences. But then to keep in the relationship, it's this willingness to say, great, this is going to be a thing. And a lot of the married couples who I'm connected with, they learned that pretty early on, or it was an organic experience. But either way, they were both about that.
I learned new things about your story and your journey that even as much as we've talked in our life, I didn't know. So that's really great. And so when we wrap up the conversation in our...
Actually, before let's ask Jesse a question.
Okay.
Jesse, do you want to ask us any questions?
Is this part of the format?
No?
This is something that I think is interesting. Yeah, exactly. We don't typically do this, but then again, this is one of our first guests, and I just think after us having grilled you and put you on the spot and curious and kind of poking and prodding, is there a question or questions for us? The next question will be the last question. Okay. So this is the pentultimate question, but what
I get them both straight.
Questions are...
You're buying time for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm always inquisitive. I get very insular. So, actually, no, I'm going to do that. Let me ask you this. Do you believe you will fall in love and be married again? Each of you. Or married for the first time?
That's a whole podcast.
We'll keep it shorter. English is I've talked about this in the podcast before, but it's my second language, so I'm pretty honed into my intuition, and my whole family is this way too, intuitive and so on. So it's surreal to have trusted it for 8 years leading me to one person, and then it suddenly like broke, COVID occurs, and then it starts to guide me into another person. I'm like, am I going to do the same thing with this other person? Is there going to be another duration of time? And again, it breaks, and I go, well, is it worth it? Is it just, maybe all I got to do is get really successful, make a ton of money, go back to Mexico, find me a much younger woman who's going to be blown away by my success, or Argentina or Colombia or Venezuela.
Probably going to be blonde.
Probably. And you know, bada bing, bada boom, I don't have to worry about it. And a lot of this work that I've done will be fine. My grandfather did something very similar. He married a woman much younger than him. And I think about that, and I think that why it's easy to want to retreat is because I'm still going through it. It's so painful to hope and dream and love and have this narrative that you hold on to so tightly, and then for it to fall apart, you're just like, oh, maybe it's just better not to. Maybe it's just better not to worry about it. And I have a certain trajectory. I want to do a lot of things, and it takes a lot of time and energy. So while they fall in love with the show, the work is what really is what defines me. And so I think that that's great to have Aaron to support that and to make me feel like maybe there is hope. But yes, I would love to, and I'm realizing it's going to be a work in progress, and I'm happy to do the work. I hope I find a partner who's willing to give of themselves. Like I can. The thing about me is I can do so much of the work. I have to find someone who's willing to do the work, and I think a lot of times it's scary. So it's exciting to hear about your willingness to grow and invest, and it gives me faith and hope. And I also pray to God a lot, which I don't do around this specific thing about giving me a partner, which I thought I had a partner. So I've never done that. So to be honest, might be like, God, make me a better person, change me, figure me out. And realizing like sometimes it's not that there was anything wrong with you. It's that there wasn't, on these certain things, there wasn't a fit. And sometimes there was a fit in the relationship, and sometimes there isn't. And you have to have a partner who is willing to grow with you or give up, or you have to give up. I had to give up something, and I wasn't going to give up the thing. And that was the thing that kind of takes away the hope, is like, but I'm not willing to give up these things. And Aaron sort of taught me like, well, maybe you don't have to. And that's what gives me hope. So yeah, long answer is yes, because of Aaron.
But I think that it's important to be clear about, because we're being kind of vague in what the thing is and all that stuff, but I think it's important to be clear that that is different than what Jesse is talking about with giving of himself and the death to self that I think God calls us in relationship to die to ourselves, to give to each other. That's different, which from what he was talking about to what you're talking about, which is you get to a point, and in order you guys talked about it, what would it take to continue with this relationship, and you both weren't willing to give up a thing,
right? Or
whatever it was, and so therefore you were both you were. Am I getting
right? No, we often say this. We didn't leave each other. We left the relationship. The relationship wasn't serving one another anymore. We still love each other, and I think our shared faith made it so that the transition was possible. Hasn't been easy, but if we didn't have a shared faith, I just wouldn't talk to her anymore. I'd just be like, this is ridiculous, waste of time, negativity. That's not to say that people can't have a positive experience without their faith. I was a hardcore atheist, so I'm sure there are some atheists out there listening to this and be like, oh, I can totally do that. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that for me, God helped create that transition, and things like, Christ is asked what happens when, you marry someone else's wife because the person's died. And God's like, Jesus says, well, that's not how it's going to work when you die. It's a different paradigm. I think so much of my willingness to grow and learn has been really having faith in what Jesus has always talked to, which is acknowledging that our experience here is temporary, and you're doing it not so that you go to heaven, but you're doing it so that you're a good person. So yeah, there is that. I think that you're right. We could have, if I was willing to give up my ambitions of being a filmmaker as well, and I think if she could give up her need for quality time, which both of those things,
there's nothing wrong with
that she has a valid need, and she's a wonderful person, and it hurt me to not spend time with her. And I was willing to sacrifice it because I feel really compelled to pursue this trajectory, and I think I'm going to succeed in it. And I think that once I succeed in it, I will be a good father, a good husband. I'll be able to give of myself in a way, and I can't give that up. Also, I come from because my family immigrated, we kind of went from a middle class to a lower class, so I also realized I don't have any other way of making income. And in her life, maybe she will have that. So yeah, but it's been interesting to have hope, to have the willingness to hope even though you may fail again. And the present person that I want to be with, I've expressed this already, she's not interested, I think, in a committed relationship with me at the moment. She may never be, which is okay. I still love her. And I've told her this many times, wish her the absolute best. It's just hard sometimes when your intuition's like, this person, and you're like, God, you can totally change my intuition. You know that, right? And God's just like, and you're like, what is happening? What am I supposed to learn? And Erin's been really helpful and I think helping me grow up a little bit, helping grow up in a way where I think as men, we can grow up, but there's a point where you kind of need a community to guide that. And I find that a lot of times in American society, I could say me as a man, I'm not supposed to be able to talk about those things. I'm supposed to be figuring this out. Or the advice is very secular, like, well, this is what you do with women. This is how you process it. Like, I'll never forget, I told Erin this. I told someone a lot of people I'd gotten out of this relationship, all my buddies were like, you got to hook up with 3 chicks. That's the thing. And I was like, what? I heard it so many times from so many different people, like, oh yeah, this is what it is. Even my brother, and I was like, is this like a thing that I've been aware of? Is that like, does it work? I mean, maybe it does on some level for so many people to speak to that. I didn't do that, but it was just fascinating that was like the thing. And so it made me think, well, I have to find a good community of people. And I talked to Erin and other folks of the faith, and they've been helpful, and it's been a really good thing. So it helps to build up the hope. But after a long-term relationship, it feels dismal. Like, and with someone who's as independent as I am, you're almost like relieved. You're like, well, great, I don't have to hope anymore. I'm done. I'm just going to be alone for the rest of my life. And Erin and other friends have been like, well, maybe, and it helps to have a good friendship with the person. So there's.
But I'm not. But let's make it clear. I've never said you have to. Don't give up hope, Diego. You're going to get married.
No.
Because to me, that's not it. To me, the conversation is about. Are you sure your intuition? Are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
No,
are you sure?
I don't want people to think that you're like, Diego, you can do the thing. No, it's the inspiration comes from the workshopping of ideas. Like, I feel broken about this thing. What are your thoughts on it? And then often you come up with questions that I have to do the work. And that's what I really enjoy about it. It's not, you're not my therapist, you're just a friend, and then vice versa. We workshop ideas. Just like we're doing right now is just curiosity around like, oh, there's some similarities with my situation. How does that parlay?
I don't have a goal for Diego to get married. I have a goal for Diego's intuition, for him to...
Yeah, what is your goal?
I don't have a goal for you. My goal is just to be an observer of your journey and answer and like, you know, process as it goes along, you know, and the vision of a wedding day, if it comes up, I'm like, you better invite me.
Absolutely.
Or when you get your Oscar, I better be, you know, at the party.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like it's kind of like I'm along for the ride. My idealism. I'm like, you're good, you know, like this girl, you know, I have like all my things or whatever, but I'm also, you know.
Well, it's good to hear it though, because I think my inner monologue is not that. My inner monologue is it's not going to work out. Stop hoping.
And that's normal because we get so vulnerable. In our vulnerability, we start to go, oh, they're better, they're never gonna, they're this. But because I'm so intuitive and you're so intuitive in a very similar way that I am, I can actually go there in that point of like, okay, well, we talk about higher selves. We talk about, well, you know, this person is like this, but in my intuition and what I see and what I sense when I'm tapping in, I'm like, oh, well, you know, and then I paint a picture of like what's really going on. And I always like have a sense of like, there's always more going on than what we are presently experiencing. And so I think that's what I offer is just affirmation of your own intuitive journey.
Right, and also women sometimes are not easy to track their logic. From a guy's, no, it's not an attack. Just like women will do something, you're like, why would they do that? Yeah. That's counter to what I would expect.
Yeah.
And so,
same with men.
Well, right. And so it's nice to be like, wait, Erin, if this person feels this way, why are they doing this? And then Erin will be like, well, let me tell you something, Diego. And it's just helpful to have that point of view because often it's accurate, or it's in the world of being accurate,
or just all of a sudden crystallizes,
maybe questions or thoughts that I've had. And so for me, that's what also. Not that you asked this question, Jesse, but I think that maybe underlying question might be, what's the goal of the podcast? And I think that's what I get out of this, and I hope other people listening and watching do, is that they realize that a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with, you don't have to deal with alone. You should talk to people. You should talk to people. You should share your journey. You should share your experience. Yes, definitely go to the right resource. We're not experts, and we've talked about that a lot. We're not therapists. And yet, at the same time, the majority of your people in your community won't be. Most people won't be. But I think a willingness to talk about it, get the help. I'm in therapy. I've had a therapist since COVID. It's been great.
I have 2 life coaches. I have amazing therapeutic friends. I have,
Yeah,
I am surrounded by a lot of
we're doing the work.
Good, wonderful, encouraging, stable, and
right.
people.
And I think you need that. You need your professional, and you also need your community of people to process these things with. And one of the conjectures I'm developing is that I think we've always needed tribes of people. We for a long time I was like, I wish we weren't so tribal, right? Like I wish that the industry that I'm in isn't so tribal. But then you go, well, what if that's okay? What if that's how we're designed to be tribal? What's the beauty in it? And you go, well, I have someone I can lean on when things don't go well. I have someone I can talk to, someone who I've got a shared experience with. Oh, there's some validity and power to this tribalism that I thought was bad, and there's a lot of beauty to it. And it really opens me up to say, I'm not perfect, I hope I can figure it out. And I think that we're actually designed to work in community, and the body of Christ is a very common concept. And I think that for people who are, non-believers, like when I was atheist, whenever I hear anything like that, I'd hate it. But it was more because I didn't understand what the underlying idea is, and the idea is that we're all interconnected. And I think the body of Christ, that concept, what it does is it says, we're intended to be in community. You're my sister, you're my brother. There's a real need for that. And yet we don't talk to it. I think when I hear it, normally it's like, hey brother, with this, that, and that. And it seems very superficial.
It's more like, bro.
Yeah.
Bro.
But I think the underlying thing.
Hey, yo, bro, it's all good, bro.
Right. But the underlying idea is like, you're going to call me out on my bad habits, or say, hey, this is something that you've done that maybe is coming back, or I'm happy for you. I celebrate it. That's good. And I think that's.
Yeah, I'm totally going to be like, yay!
I know, me too.
And I'm like, you're better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's also been a big journey, I think, in terms of your initial question about, do I hope to get married? Yeah, to hope though, I have to realize I have to give up some things. And one of the things I've talked to Aaron about this a lot is that I come from a particular family where you're encouraged to be very good looking and take care of yourself. And one of the underlying things, and my mom would never say this, but there's sort of a possibility that my dad had this streak of being a womanizer, right? And to a degree, that's attractive as a guy. It's exciting to have conquests and to be in good shape and to be in the prime of your life and be like, that's so brilliant. As someone who's an introverted high school kid who couldn't talk to girls at all, always wanted to be outgoing and always was involved in performance, now would be a great time for me to do that. And yet as I'm beginning or even think about it, my intuition's like, don't go there. And I think that to get married, I also have to even be willing to give up of that desire. And that's a bizarre, and I think that's kind of healthy to not be in a relationship as I think about that. Like, what does it mean to give that up? I think as a man, it's like giving up my fertility. Like, there's this opportunity to make children, and I'm giving that up. Like, that seems so.
Well, with lots of women, I mean, you're not giving it up for the one.
Right, not for the one, but I think on some biological, carnal, primitive level, like we're designed for that.
Yeah.
And a lot of what the Word of God is like, yeah, you've got these mechanisms inside of you, but you can't let them run your life. But it's so easy, and you watch movies or anything pop culture related, and you're kind of like supposed to do that. If you're a good-looking guy, you can talk to women easily.
You think you're good-looking?
Oh, I know I am. I don't have a doubt about it. No, I don't have it. And that's also like an American thing we don't talk about. But no, of course.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'm very comfortable. I'm an actor. People pay me to model for things. Yeah. You wouldn't hire somebody unless they did that.
I think... I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
I think my answer is that is my desire. But what I'm learning is that it might not look, again, in the paradigm might be completely different. The paradigm of marriage, not that I'm interested in like weird open marriages, and that's not the point. But the way that I was functioning and trying to be in marriage has to look different if I'm going to be married again. That's what I'm learning about my own self and expectations of it and of a partner. And so that's my answer. Is that?
I'm just interested in, yeah.
So, are you laughing at me? I can talk and talk and talk, right? But we've got to wrap this up.
So just echo that, the answer is yes, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, I think the answers are actually fascinating to me because it is a nuanced answer. It's not just, I want to get married,
Right, because there's so much. It's not just we're not 20 years old going, exactly. I want to get married. Right. It's a lot different at this point. Yeah. And my answer is I desire for partnership. I desire for that intimacy that that we all love, and the bliss and all the things. But and then marriage would be sort of a natural for me, like a ceremony, you know, a ring and that kind of stuff, that would probably be like a natural progression for me personally that I would want. And for me, I think that it is in my whole journey and coming full circle in myself and landing somewhere is that I do believe that it is a design from God in my own life. But I'm still working out how that would actually look for me, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And because I also don't want to go through another divorce. And it's not a dream come true. It's not every little girl's dream to be like, yeah, I'm going to get divorced again, you know. But the deep desire that I've always had in my life is not the perfect picture that you post on social media. It's the I'm particularly interested in building and working together on some kind of thing, like a path or inspiring each other, you know, if I'm doing my own work and my partner's doing his own work, but we actually kind of spur each other on in a way. They would have to have all these kind of elements, and then the natural byproduct would be like, let's both intentionally walk into marriage in the way that we both believe that God had kind of designed it for our life, if that makes sense. And it doesn't look like the way that it looked before to me.
Yeah.
So, all right. So here we are. We're wrapping up our conversation and our session with my very interesting and wonderful brother, Jesse. And
Thank you, Jesse.
yeah, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's strange to talk so much about myself, but it's an honor to be invited and be with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, we're interested.
Oh, thank
We're
you.
fascinated. And so we always like to end the I was inspired by my son. You know, my son, your nephew.
I know him, yes.
He's a precious soul. He's a guiding light, and since he was born in my life. And when he was about 6 or 7 years old, he said, I've told you this before, but I'm going to kind of bring it up again. He said, he walked into the room and he said, "Mama, the only thing you want to think about is love." And I said, "Oh yeah, tell me more." And he said, "Love is so precious." He said, "It's so precious that it can break things. It can even break things that aren't true." And then I said, "What else do you know about love?" And he said, "That's all I know." And then he walked out, like he dropped the mic and just left. So our question for each other and for all of our guests is, what in your life has love broken that's not true?
This is interesting. So let me give you a little context. The 3 to 4 years before I went from Minnesota to LA, something happened in my soul where I just felt like a hot blade cut off a part of my spirit. And I had zero spiritual relationship at all. I just felt like a part of me died, and it was just done. I could not engage with anything spiritually, and I just stopped praying entirely, which makes a lot of sense to those last few years of how much that relationship digressed. But then coming to LA and Max leaving me and being alone and realizing, okay, just something's not right. I don't know what to do. Something isn't right with my life. And so I went to this, it was a middle of the week church service in Koreatown. And I was just like, I just looked something up and was like, I'll just go to this thing. And again, like alone in LA and all this stuff happening. And I remember it was dark, which I like, and I'm coming in the pews, and it was a night thing, and they started the music going, and it started to move me, and then I can't remember what the guy came up and talked to me and said, you know, just go ahead and pray whatever you need to pray. And I think the music was still going on, and I think at that point, the first time in years that I even just been able to talk to God, I just said, God, I'm here if you want me. And like immediately, I felt the voice, I heard it say, I want you. So the idea of just like me being completely alone and not wanted, maybe forgotten as a child, was like God just saying, I want you. And I don't always know exactly how he wants to, want me to be or do, but he wants me somehow, for some reason. And if I can accept that, and the more I believe that, then I don't feel so alone. I can feel valued, and like if I'm valued, then I can give value to other people. Sometimes I have this saying where I kind of get all unsettled and I say, I am loved and I am loving. I am a gift and I am giving. So I think that broke a belief that was not true.
Wow, amen.
Picture perfect story. It's beautiful, everything. Wow. So what was it exactly? If you had said it, what was the thing that you believed that wasn't true?
That he wasn't valued.
Right. Yeah.
Wanted.
I wanted to say.
Sorry. I'm like, Diego, did you just?
Of course, I was here being moved. It's just that it helps for the audience to really hear it. Just, what was it?
The belief was that I am not wanted and I'm alone.
Amen. Love is the remedy.
And that wasn't true.
Yeah.
Love remedied that belief.
Yeah, I felt
In
love
that
at that moment, and I just started sobbing. I was like a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Jesse.
Blessings on your continued journey.
Thank you.
You're welcome back anytime.
Okay, next time I'm swinging through Denver.
Yeah, we're really grateful that you opened up and you were so
Yeah.
authentic and honest. I think when you're interviewed like this, it's so easy not to be. And every step along the way, you really challenge yourself to open up and be vulnerable. And we understand it's a lot to do, and we're grateful for this time, and hopefully it's beneficial for the folks listening to it for the first time, or maybe someone who's going to listen to this again and again, because I kind of want to listen to this
Yeah.
again and again.
And as always, if you are being vulnerable, or if you're watching this and you're feeling vulnerable, do some self-care. Rest, drink water, drink some tea.
Find a community, find
a community, yeah. So thank you so much. I think we're wrapping up.
All right.
Love you, Jess.
Love you guys.
Yeah. Love you too, Jess.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. What do you want to say, Diego
Thank you
Albino
so-
Rodriguez?
Muchísimas gracias a la gente. Thank you so much for everyone who listened, who is part of our community. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and feedback. And this is another episode for Love is the Remedy with Diego Rodriguez.
Aaron, Jesse, like us, follow, subscribe, share, comment. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.